All right, here we are for Keys of the Castle, episode 2. Last episode, I talked about just kind of my history and spark for loving Disneyland and theme parks and creativity and that sort of a thing. The creativity of it all. And actually, at the end of the last episode, I accidentally called the name Keys to the Castle, but it is actually Keys of the Castle. But I'm new to this, so it's all good. Anyway, here we are, episode 2, and I am going to potentially be talking. Well, I'm kind of just free flowing. This whole entire everything about this podcast is literally just on a whim. But basically, I think kind of today I wanted to, or on this episode, wanted to talk about kind of what sort of, I guess, what I would do if I was in charge of Disney, how I would change it, and I guess also just kind of throwing around some ideas and giving my opinion. So first off, once again, I am doing all this on a whim. So this is not going to be, well, if it doesn't seem like professional status, that's because it's not. And also, just an important heads up, this is going to include my honest opinion, both on this podcast and also on future ones, I'm guessing. But definitely this one's just going to be all my just very honest opinion. So hopefully people don't take it too much as too much criticism or negativity. Definitely as a ideas person and maybe someone who would be considered creative. I think that's been a tough thing for me, is sort of being misunderstood sometimes. A lot of times, kind of feels like most of the time being misunderstood as being like overly critical or judgmental, when really sometimes I'm just an ideas person. So I'm just able to throw out a bunch of ideas, a bunch of sort of opinions, like maybe this, maybe that. So that's kind of something that I've felt before. So just a heads up on that. I'm going to be throwing out ideas, and obviously some of them are opinions, some of them are critiques and stuff like that. And as someone who likes to come up with different ideas and new possibilities, it is sometimes a challenge to make sure I don't cross over into that negativity zone of just over critiquing and being overly judgmental and stuff like that. So all of this either way is just my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it, of course. It's just my own personal thoughts. So that's what will be on this episode today and on this podcast. But definitely just a heads up that I am not by any means like an extreme, I guess Disney apologist. So let's see. I will say, though, I mean, on the other side of that coin, I do want to inspire creativity. So I want to inspire creativity for other people who might be listening to this, hopefully coming up with new ideas or just toying around or playing around with ideas can help you in a practical way and have maybe even some sort of utility use for you in your life to think outside of the box and come up with ways to do things better, or even if it's just not utilitarian, but to just enjoy life, coming up with creative ways to enjoy life more. Either way, whatever it is, I hope to inspire people in their creativity and in creativity in general, maybe even just to appreciate it more. I don't know, but I would say that's probably maybe one of the main goals of, or the main values of this podcast is creativity and inspiring creativity and thinking outside the box. I think it's something that we need more of in the world is creativity, and both, in entertainment world and in the practical world, what have you. But either way, this will be more so in terms of just throwing around ideas and, like, I guess sort of imagining things for Disney, just for fun, just for the kicks. But I really do hope it inspires people creatively. So that is that. Let me see, what else do I have here? Let's see, what's next? So yeah, I guess as far as, I'll just jump straight into the thick of it. So I'm going to jump straight into just kind of my 2 cents maybe, or I'm just going to kind of jump around sporadically, again, on a whim, just on kind of my current view and opinion, I guess, on Disney. And again, specifically Disneyland in California. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna say what I think, what I love, what I've always loved, and I would say more than anything, maybe what I wish could be or would be different, or the way I would enjoy the parks more. And I'm just gonna throw stuff out there. So I'm gonna start off with a heavy hitter and say that I'm gonna say something crazy. I'm just gonna start off this way and say something absolutely crazy, absolutely nuts. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, I guess maybe the issue, I guess you would want to call it, or I don't want to call it an issue. I'll just call it the idea. Let's just, maybe this is stemming from the idea of parks being crowded or overcrowded, or just maybe even not in terms of like crowds of guests, but also just limited space in terms of creativity and creating more rides and attractions and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, if I could change something about Disney right now, if I was just suddenly in charge, I think my first thing, which I know probably nobody's gonna agree, literally my first thing to do would be to build, I would say, another park. And not only another park, I would build maybe even multiple parks. And maybe I should throw in the fact that maybe this is like finances aside. These are just ideas. This is just hypothetical or whatever. But still, this is what I would do. This is what I wish, would happen or could happen. So just go with me here if you like. I don't think that there would be anything wrong with building a new park. And I feel like, I don't know, I guess in my honest and humble opinion, I don't see why that couldn't or shouldn't be a priority. Besides the fact that maybe it would be, I guess if it was completely financially impossible. I am by no means a, Disney company expert or economist expert, an economics expert, clearly. But, yeah, I don't see why it couldn't be a priority, or at least in the plans. Just because I feel like there's just so much more. There's just so much more that could be done. There's so much more that could be built. There's so much space that could be enjoyed. So much Disneyland type of atmosphere that can be enjoyed. And screw it, like, it doesn't have to be a Disney company. It could be anything, anybody. I think just another really incredible and amazing theme park would be would be awesome. In the U.S., that is. I just don't see how that can be wrong. Like, how can you possibly go wrong with another Disney park? I mean, I realize that you can do it wrong. Like, I know there's a lot of people that hated California Adventure when it first opened, and the limo ride and all that stuff. I get that. I get all of that. But, I mean, look they improved, and it's so much better now. And even then, I feel like it's better than nothing. Like, I would have rather walked around the original opening day California Adventure theme park as opposed to just walking around a parking lot somewhere empty. So I feel like it's always going to be worth it. I think even if they do a bad job, it's worth it. To be honest, there's a lot of things that I think are new that are not a great job and kind of are even a bad job, but it's like, well, it's better than nothing. It's better than empty space. But also, I will say one of my greatest wishes, though, actually is, which this is obviously impossible. We can never go back to this, I don't think, but one of my greatest wishes would be to be able to park right in front of the Disneyland entrance again, because the entrance of California Adventure Park in California, at the California Disney property, used to be pretty much just a parking lot. So that California Adventure entrance is basically like feet away from the Disneyland entrance, and that's where you used to park, in front of the theme park, just like if you were to go to, I don't know, the movie theater or Knott's or what have you. It's like you literally park and then you just walk into the theme park. So I feel like I remember there being that parking and maybe trams as well. But either way, I really miss that. So just wanted to put that in there because that's one of my greatest wishes too. So yeah, another Disney theme park, and that is a whole other episode in and of itself probably. So talking about what kind of different spin-off parks that there could be. I know people really want there to be like a Villains Land. That's just a land that is themed just based off of like villains, Disney villains. And yeah, I don't know if I would actually want that inside of Disneyland personally, but I think I don't know. I've heard rumors that it could be a possibility. I think I heard that rumor once. Either way, I think of something like, a spin-off park maybe being a Disney villain park, or maybe a Disney park that's just more for teens and adults in general. So maybe Villains Land goes in that park. So yeah, I don't know, just a bunch of spin-offs. I know for me also another big one is like, because I'm not really super like all for Villains Land, but something I would be in favor of would be creating classic Disney rides, maybe such as the likes of Peter Pan, or the rides like in Fantasyland and stuff like that. Maybe a cross between those classic Disney rides that are classic Disney dark rides in Fantasyland, a cross between that and then obviously like the new incredible technology, creative rides that we have, everything from the 80s and 90s like Indiana Jones to Rise of the Resistance that we have now. So I would like to see rides that are classic Disney rides, sort of that type of style, based on movies that don't really have rides. Like, I know there are rides in different Disney parks on movies like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and I know we have the Little Mermaid ride and stuff like that, but I'm just, I don't know, thinking of other rides like even like Lion King, or like a proper, like really crazy decked out, in depth, I guess you could say immersive, Aladdin ride. Like that would be absolutely insane. Or Lady and the Tramp, 101 Dalmatians. I don't know, that sort of thing. So that's something that I think would be amazing and incredible. Definitely something that I've dreamed about before. So yeah, I guess that could be a whole other episode of what would another Disney park be, or what could it be, or multiple Disney parks. But I guess just going back to the current state of Disney, in my opinion, my humble opinion, what I would change, what I like, what I don't like. I'm just talking about all this stuff just for fun, in case anybody wants to hear, in case somebody feels the same way. I know some of this stuff would, like, I already know for a fact some of the things that I'm saying or going to say on this episode, like, people would absolutely just, like, I don't know, hate me for it. But so let me jump from one crazy subject into a whole other crazy subject, and maybe start taking off some rides and ride opinions. So I'm going to go and jump straight into Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland. And I'm going to jump into that one because for, I guess, most of my life, that has been my favorite ride. So especially as a kid, as a young kid, 100% hands down, Pirates of the Caribbean was my favorite ride. So my thoughts and feelings toward that ride have changed over the years, and the ride that we have now is currently not really the same ride, in my opinion. Is not the same ride at all. I mean, if you ask me, I would say it's, like, if I'm going to be dramatic about it, emotionally, like, just saying how I feel about it, it's like 50% the same ride. Maybe more. Maybe 50 to 75% the same ride, and the rest is different to me. That's just how I feel about it. But I'll jump into Pirates. So yes, definitely a lot has changed for how I feel about that ride. A lot has changed about that ride. I would say one of the biggest things that has changed in Pirates is the overall theming of reflecting the movies. So obviously the ride came out first at Disneyland in the 60s, just shortly after Walt Disney had passed away. And the movies did not come out till, I don't know, 40, 50 years later, something like that. I'm not a math guy, but it's not difficult math. But either way, the movies came out much later, several years later. And since then, the ride has been changed to reflect several things based off of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie or movies. So that in and of itself is a huge and massive change to me, and maybe even other people who might be considered Disney purists. I'm not saying that I'm a Disney purist, but probably I'm sure there's some other people out there who are Disney purists who agree that those movie references are massive changes. And I've even spoken to people who are not as much of Disney fans as I've spoken to people and friends who are not as much of a Disney fan as I am, and they think that it's a massive change. So one of my friends in particular actually kind of brought it up to me and got me thinking about it. So I guess specifically, I'll talk about one part of the ride first. So Pirates, and it's the ship battle, the cannon battle scene, where you exit out of the tunnel and then go into like the open body of water, and there's the ship to the left, and then the fort, or whatever you want to call it, to the right and straight ahead of you, and there's the cannon fire going off, and there's the music to Pirates of the Caribbean movie that was in the original movie. Don't know the name, can't remember the composer, but either way, I think for me personally, that's one of those things that could have been maybe something more along the lines of like Hyperspace Mountain, where Hyperspace Mountain is where they take Space Mountain, which is, of course, just a general space-themed ride, and they make it into more of a Star Wars-themed ride. And it's just temporary. It's just something that they've done before, and I think they bring it back periodically. I can't remember. Maybe it's in May for Star Wars Day or something. I don't know. Either way, I think that would have been really cool to bring in that music just as like maybe a promotion for like just after the movie, or I don't even know, just something that is not permanent in my opinion. Maybe even same thing with Barbossa. I do really like Barbossa being there. I would say I personally enjoy and like Barbossa being there more than the Jack Sparrows throughout the ride, which I'm not completely and totally against. Like I said earlier, kind of anything is better than nothing, so it's like the fact that Pirates is the way it is, that obviously of course is better than just no Pirates. So yeah, I guess with the Barbossa being there, I'm kind of conflicted. Like, I think I kind of would probably prefer, like, again, if it was up to me, if I was in charge, I would split it 50-50. I would definitely do like 6 months with Barbossa, 6 months without. And maybe even the same with the theming of the song from the movie and the soundtrack from the movie playing on that particular part of the ride. I would say it would be good to split it up. I think, and I guess I'm just firing off at this point with critiques and judgments, but I think there's way too many Jack Sparrows in Pirates of the Caribbean ride. I think maybe the one at the end, to me, again, could be there maybe half and half. 6 months out of the year or something, I don't know. And I think it's the first Jack Sparrow that is probably my personal favorite. I think the fact that there's 3 of them in there, that is too much. Sorry I didn't give any spoiler alert if you've never been, but yeah, I think there's 3 Jack Sparrows in there, and to me that is 1 or 2 too many, or 1 or 3 too many. No, 1 or 2 too many, I would say. I don't particularly mind the Jack Sparrow. I think it's really cool actually to have it in there, and it's a great animatronic, and it looks very realistic, so it's really cool. But so that's another one. I guess my other current pet peeves, we're just going straight up being honest and calling it what it is, a pet peeve. I think my other pet peeves for Pirates of the Caribbean, I'm not sure if that, like, the mermaid stuff towards the beginning, like after the first 2 drops, I don't remember if that's original or how long that's been there, but I would say that, and the special effects, not because they're special effects, because I think the special effect itself is absolutely insanely incredible, but where it's placed in the ride, to me, I don't enjoy it at all whatsoever. It's the pirate in the cove tunnel just before the ship cannon battle scene, actually, going from kind of the captain's quarters area of the ride into the ship battle scene. So there's when you're approaching it and you're looking at it straight on when it's coming up ahead still, and you're still approaching up to it. So you see the pirate in there sitting cross-legged, and you've got him as like a skeleton, I think it is. And then as you pass, he turns into, I guess, flesh and no longer a skeleton. The special effects are incredible. They're absolutely insane. But for me, where they place them is in my opinion, if you were to pick the worst spot to place that effect of the skeleton person going into the live person, to me, specifically for the ride experience, that is exactly the place that I would not, that's the number one place I would not want that to be. And the reason, and maybe this is tied to like nostalgia or going on the ride as a young kid or whatever, but to me, it totally reminds me, and maybe this is getting super personal here, but totally reminds me that I am on a ride at a theme park with special effects, which to me, when you're in that cove and in that tunnel and in that cave, in that specific part of Pirates of the Caribbean, that to me is like the center point, most immersive part of the ride, because you already experienced the intro of the ride, which is incredible. It's beautiful. It's amazing. The whole intro of that ride is, I mean, it's there's nothing like it in the world. We all know this. And then you're going through and seeing the skeleton at the wheel of the ship, the helm of the ship or whatever, and then the captain's quarters, all the treasure, all that stuff. And I guess my opinion and my thought is that when you're in that cave, going through that tunnel, about to enter into like the ship cannon battle type scene, not sure what it's technically called, but to me that's the most realistic feeling that you have on that ride, of like that you're really in a cove, you're really in a completely different world. Like it, I mean, think about it. Even if you're not a kid or not imagining that you're actually in some like magical type of pirate world, at the very least you are, in your mind, you know that you've gone into some type of cave, or you're like more underground, you're like further away, you're inside, you're deeper into a different experience other than the regular average world. Even within the park, where in the front of the line, out in the park, people walking around, whatever. But at this point of the ride in Pirates of the Caribbean, you're like super deep into it, and it's like the most, I don't know, I guess the part of the ride to me, in my opinion, that would feel the most realistic. So personally, for me, that special effect, as insanely incredible as it is, it kind of takes me out of that moment and kind of just reminds me, hey, check out these special effects, check out this technology. You're not in past time where pirates are real and there is no technology. You're not in, this magical place that even if it's not real, it's easy to imagine it being real because it looks real. It kind of takes me away from all that. So I kind of wish they would have put this somewhere else. That's just my opinion. I know that's a hard hit, and I know most people think opposite, and I understand that it works as part of the story of the ride and the storyline, and it fits perfectly right there. I get that logically, but this podcast has nothing to do with logic. This podcast has everything to do with creativity and thinking outside the box and doing things different. So, all that to say, I wouldn't have put that there. Those are some things I would change about Pirates of the Caribbean. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. And yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that for right now for Pirates of the Caribbean. Actually, wait, no. I'm going to go ahead and say also, I think most... I'm not going to say most. I'm going to say a lot of... So, I think, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe the first half of the ride, I would say, is most similar to the original ride. And then the last half of the ride. So, everything from the cannon battle scene to the rest of the ride has been changed from the original thing. So, I'm going to say a lot of those changes that I wish were different or that they didn't have or what have you is kind of in that second half of the ride. So everything from that special effect I just mentioned and the cannon battle scene to the rest of the ride, pretty much all that stuff where there's like kind of like live people involved, those type of scenes. I really do appreciate and enjoy I honestly am going to just say the opening day Pirates of the Caribbean. I think I really do enjoy that more than the one we have today. That's just me, not saying I'm right, not saying that's the right way. I'm not saying there's certain things they shouldn't have had in there or what have you. I just know that in terms of entertainment and creativity, I think I just appreciate the original ones there, and there's certain things, especially at the end before the final lift hill up. So the scene where the pirates are kind of shooting at each other with their guns and their pistols and stuff like that. That scene in particular, for me, I think if that scene were the same, I can't remember exactly what's changed, but if that scene were exactly identical to opening day, I mean, I think I would still enjoy that ride a lot more. But anyway, enough of that. I'm going to back off of that. I'm done railing on Pirates for right now. I guess I didn't really come up with any new ideas for Pirates. That was kind of just a critique. But at least I came up with the new idea of new parks and stuff like that. And maybe that should be a whole other podcast. I was going to say video, but podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about a ride I've never been on. So I'm just going to jump from Pirates over to the Florida Disney World park, Walt Disney World. And even though I've never been there, never been on this ride, I've seen the ride through. So I'm just going to go based off of that. Again, this is all just for fun. None of this should be taken serious. So I am going to talk about an interesting, touch on an interesting topic here with this ride. A couple of them, actually, because I'm thinking of the Ratatouille ride at Disney World. So, Ratatouille ride. So, a couple different things about this ride. So, one thing is that it's a trackless ride, which, is a specific thing. And another thing is that it's a 3D ride. So those can be, again, a trackless ride system. That can be a whole other podcast itself, a whole episode. 3D rides with, requiring you to put on 3D glasses to enjoy the 3D effect of the ride. That can be a whole episode itself. But I'm just going to talk about Ratatouille in general. And I will say that Ratatouille I'm going to say it's currently my number one favorite Disney movie. So that is also why I have strong feelings and ideas for that ride, because I guess I have expectations of it, similarly to how with Pirates I have the expectation of the way it was when I was young, or the videos of opening day Pirates. Either way, when I think about Ratatouille and watching the ride through and watching that ride and that ride experience, I've never been on it, and obviously it would be a lot cooler to me having gone on the ride. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I'm sure the ride would be better to experience and enjoy in reality and live and in person than it would be just watching the video. But I do have still a bone or two to pick with the trackless ride system and the 3D experience. So if you can't tell already, those two things are not particularly my favorite types of effects. Well, I have nothing against trackless ride systems in terms of them being trackless. I think that's amazing. I think I would probably prefer that, I think, in terms of enjoyment, creativity, entertainment, all that stuff. I think rides being trackless would obviously make it more realistic, I think, for the most part. Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe tracks are weirdly part of the enjoyment. I'm trying to think of, like, what if Indiana Jones had a trackless ride system? Oh my gosh, what if that's what they're doing right now during the refurbishment of Indiana Jones, which I think is still down. I think they're still refurbishing it. But what if that's what they're doing? Imagine. I mean, they're totally not, obviously. Of course, they're not going to do that, but imagine if it was. I wonder what that would be like. Would I like it more? I feel like naturally I would like it less, which is a weird thing. Maybe just out of nostalgia, or maybe it's like a safety thing, like seeing where the track is and where it's going and kind of have a little bit of a heads up, and it makes you, I don't know, a little bit more at ease to enjoy the ride. I don't know. Very interesting. But I'm going to go ahead and say with Ratatouille, one of the things for me that I think could be better, and this is also included in the Rise of the Resistance ride, which I've been on at Disneyland a handful of times, is just the way the floor looks. And maybe this is only I don't know what the reason is, but for me it makes me feel like I'm in an actual warehouse. Like, it makes me feel like I'm in a show building. To me, it could be more immersive. Like, I understand that Fantasyland rides, and especially something like, let's just take in general, because anything's possible, right? That's kind of the basis of me and my thought process for this podcast, is anything is possible. So let's take something, for instance, which would be the extreme opposite, like Peter Pan's flight. So Peter Pan is obviously the ride car that you ride in is suspended from up above. So you're floating above the floor, and so when you look down at the floor, everything is covered. So everything is covered with theming, so it's not just like a plain ground, a plain floor. That's obviously completely the opposite of Ratatouille and Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. And I'm sure with the 3D glasses on also with Ratatouille, you're kind of probably not as worried with the ground, and it probably doesn't stick out as much. I think though, with like classic Fantasyland rides, even like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride or Snow White, the art and the displays throughout the ride are so immersive, and the ride is so dark, and the ride is so filled with theming and art and all that stuff, that you are not focused on the ground. You don't see it. The ground is really dark. You don't really, I don't even remember what the ground really looks like all too much. But when I think of something like Rise of the Resistance, I think of a lot of open space on the ground, and just the way it looks like I'm in a garage or like a warehouse or something like that. It kind of takes me out of the experience. So I've heard someone say before on another podcast that that's how like they would picture the ground being if they were actually like if basically just that the trackless ride system flooring in Rise of the Resistance for them looks more realistic the way it is. But I don't feel that way. And I just think that I'm not sure if there's a way to do a combination like on Ratatouille of 3D and not 3D. I know actually like what's the ride? There's the Pirates of the Caribbean ride I've seen on the videos from Shanghai, I think it is, or I can't remember if it's Hong Kong or Shanghai, but where there's a screen that is incorporated into the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which is completely insane because there's water in the ride. And it's also insane because even on the videos, it looks realistic. It looks like it's actually real. So it's insane. It's mind-blowing even just on the YouTube videos. So I can't even imagine how it would be in real life. But something like that I think would have been really cool maybe in Ratatouille. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But this is just me. I think because Ratatouille is my favorite ride, I think I would have had, again, the expectation thing. I would have had higher expectations of the details of the ride, such as the flooring, and I think it might be the first trackless ride system that Disney's ever done. I'm not really sure, so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe we're just at the beginning of the trackless ride system era. Either way, I don't favor 3D glasses or 3D rides. I've never liked the experience of like 3D movies in the movie theater. To me, again, it's one of those things that instead of just accepting the experience for what it is and using my own emotions and mind and imagination to connect and feel like I'm in the experience, to me it kind of is a barrier. Like it's something that just reminds me that there's special effects involved and that there's all these other additional things. Like it's not something that is just part of reality or easier to experience as if you're actually there in the movie or in the world of the ride and Ratatouille and whatever. Either way, I don't know. It's kind of dumb because I guess all that to say I don't know how I would change Ratatouille. I guess I just really need to experience it for myself and see what it's like. I just know that I don't favor 3D rides, so I wish there was a way, and here's just my idea. I guess here it is. I wish there was a way to make some of those effects and experiences that they have on Ratatouille ride with the 3D glasses experience and the 3D effect experience. I wish there was a way to have those experience without the 3D glasses and do a mix of the ride being just analog and also 3D. I think that would be the perfect ride to do. Maybe like even, I was going to say half and half, but maybe like a 75% 3D-ish type of experience. I don't know how, again, but maybe 50 to 75% 3D or that sort of type of somehow like something that's a greater effect than just a regular old dark ride, but also incorporate some of those details of like the classic Fantasyland rides or what have you, to create an experience where things like the floor is more detailed and you don't have the distraction of wearing the 3D glasses. Again, I've never experienced the ride for myself. I need to go do that. These are just ideas. I'm just talking about this for fun. And obviously I have some sort of thing where I want every ride to resemble a Fantasyland ride or take inspiration from it. So again, just ideas, just creative ideas that may or may not be creative, but I don't know. That's something that I would like to see if I had the freedom to change the Ratatouille ride and mess with it. Those are some of the things I would mess with and how I would mess with them. Here's one thing that I think would be really cool. So for Thunder Mountain, back over in, I'll just talk about the one in Disneyland because that's the one that I've been on probably hundreds of times. I haven't been on the other ones in any other park, but I've been on the one in Disneyland. And there's one specific thing that I would like to, well, it's kind of a mixture of adding something and a mixture of changing it to the way it used to be. So the earthquake scene with the moving rocks and shaking rocks. So from what I understand, that was removed because of an accident that happened at a different park, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know the information. I don't know if that's true. I'm not saying it's true in any way, shape, or form. But from what I heard is that on Thunder Mountain, when you are going on that first lift hill towards kind of the beginning of the ride, there used to be some rocks that were simulating an earthquake. The rocks were shaking. They were really big, like sort of like boulders. And I think at one of the parks, one of the boulders and rocks actually fell down. And they ended up changing all of the Thunder Mountains to not have that effect. And I really liked that effect. Again, I don't know if it's just the nostalgia of it, but I really thought it was really great. Don't get me wrong, if I had to choose between the original or old school Thunder Mountain before the most recent major update refurbishment, I would definitely choose the new one. Like those new effects of the fire, the smoke, the fuse thingies, the dynamite fuses and all that. That stuff is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love it. I'm freaking obsessed with it. It's one of my favorite rides. But if there were a way to do like that scene with the moving rocks, I think it would be awesome to have an earthquake and the dynamite about to explode. Which I think that's, I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember now if that's where the dynamite explodes. But either way, they have different effects there now. And if it were up to me, I'd have both of them there. I would just put it all there. Because why not? I would just go for it. Let's see. So that's that. That is Thunder Mountain. Either way, I loved that ride though. It's so good. I'm going to move on, just checking my little notes here. So, dang. Star Wars and that type of stuff is a whole other thing. Indiana Jones is a whole other thing. That could be a whole other episode. Same for opinions on California Adventure. That could be a whole other episode. But I'll just jump into it for Rise of the Resistance and those rides. So, actually, I'm thinking Rise of the Resistance, Star Tours, and Millennium Falcon. So, here's my whole take on some of that, which I'm not going to touch on the whole issue of Tomorrowland and what should they do with Tomorrowland. That's going to have to be on a different thing. And the theming conflict between Tomorrowland and Star Wars Land, like all of that is just, man, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. That's, the wheels in my head are turning right now, but I'm just going to have to hold off on that for right now. Unless I think of something cool spontaneously right now. But either way, I'll just leave that off. For right now, though, Rise of the Resistance. It's a good ride. here's my really quick theory on it, and let's see how quick I can do this. So there's this theory. So spoiler alert if you don't want to hear some of the ideas that are behind the magic, you could say, or behind the concepts and fun of the Disney rides and how they came about through Disney Imagineering. So, Rise of the Resistance. My main change that I would do on that ride is with the story. So same thing with Star Wars Land in general for me. And yeah, I don't really want to touch too much on the whole... I'm trying to not get into the whole Star Wars Land and Tomorrowland sort of issues. But for Rise of the Resistance, as far as the story goes, there is a specific approach that Tony Baxter, I believe it was, used on Indiana Jones for sure, Star Tours for sure, potentially Thunder Mountain Railroad. Not sure about that one. I could be completely off, completely wrong. But definitely on Indiana Jones and Star Tours, Tony Baxter used a specific type of idea for the experience and storyline, I guess you could say, or story of each of those rides. So here comes a spoiler alert if you don't want to know what the secret is, because it did kind of change once I found out once I found out about this, and I think it was through the Imagineering documentary on Disney Plus. But once I found out about this approach, it totally opened my eyes. I honestly kind of had no idea of even what the story was behind Indiana Jones, I don't think, before I watched that documentary. But either way, I really think that if it were me, I would have changed, or I would have made Rise of the Resistance different in the storyline and would have kept it either traditional classic Tony Baxter approach, which is, here it comes, that being a tourist in the world of fill in the blank, Star Tours, fill in the blank with Indiana Jones, fill in the blank with Rise of the Resistance, being a tourist in that world or that experience, it makes it more believable. It makes it more, these are my words, I'm going to say it makes it more subconsciously immersive, where it's easier to believe that you're just a tourist going through the Temple of the Forbidden Eye with Indiana Jones. That's easier to believe than it is to believe that you are some sort of fighter who's actually part of an army in a galaxy far, far away, in Rise of the Resistance and stuff like that. So that's my critique on that ride, is they should have stuck to the classic approach. In my opinion, I think that creative tactic is better than making that change and making it where the employees are screaming and shouting at you. That always just it just doesn't feel nice, even though it's supposed to be an immersive experience and a theming thing. Me personally, I just don't enjoy it. Again, having the ride, having the experience, that's better than there being no Star Wars Land and no Rise of the Resistance ride, because it's such a super cool and fun ride. So I get that I might be in the minority here, but that's my take on it. I'll have to think more on. I guess maybe this episode is more so just like on critiques and less about new ideas, and more so just about what I would change. But yeah, I think I definitely would have had that Rise of the Resistance storyline 100%. I personally don't like or agree with at all the whole being the Resistance and what have you. So I'll have to think more about what I would do differently, like in place of what they have now exactly. But that's my sort of thing. I think, I mean, there's always more than one way to do things, right? So I think I think what would make it more realistic would be if the employees were, so if we were still part of the Resistance, keep everything the same, but change the employees and the cast members to being the Resistance. Like, because that part where they are the Resistance, once you're loading onto the ride vehicle, that is so cool. Like, that's the best part of that whole thing. And I think they're at the end as well. But I think that they should be I think all of the cast members should be a Resistance person along with you. Like, I think I'm gonna go with that. I think that's my idea for that. I think that's what should replace it. I think it would actually be really exciting to still be a part of the Resistance in the story of the Rise of the Resistance ride and experience, but maybe have like one cast member per group, or I don't know, do it in a way where we're all on the same team here, we're trying to get in and out. I know that would ruin the storyline because of the scene of the stormtroopers and all that stuff, but again, there's always a way to make it work. Here's a moment of inspiration that I want to give. Anything is possible. Anything's possible. So, like, they could even have it where there's a cast member that's a prisoner with us, with the guests, with the other Resistance members, and there's one other cast member that has us captive, or maybe they could even use like an actual Kylo Ren cast member, like who would, the guy who would be actually walking around Star Wars land in the park and stuff like that. Like, maybe you can have someone like that who's actually like holding all of us captive, including the cast members. I'm just spitballing here. Either way, I really sharply disagree with the sentiment of the cast members and employees being part of the First Order and us being part of the Resistance, and them holding us captive and them shouting at us and whatever, being kind of crass and whatever. I really personally don't like that, and I think there's definitely a better way. I think there's a way to make it more fun, more creative, more immersive than what it is. There's always room for improvement, right? Always room for improvement, and anything's possible. Those are the terms of my podcast. It's my podcast. I can do what I want. So those are my terms on here. Anything's possible, and there's always room for improvement. So that's probably the main thing I would change. With Star Wars Land in general, I think that it would have been cool. So the same way that Indiana Jones is not based off of like a specific movie, I don't think, since there's like a few different movies, the same way that you're not just like stepping into a super, like, nobody thinks about stepping into like a super exact period of time in Indiana Jones. I mean, they have that in the backstory and in the storyline of the ride of Indiana Jones, but no one really thinks about it all that much. Like, no one really cares, I don't think. We just kind of ride the ride because it's amazing and it's the best ride ever in the world, pretty much. And the line is amazing and the queue is insane. So I think in that same way, I think that Star Wars Land in general should be just a mix. somehow of all Star Wars eras.